Hi, I'm Woody Savage. I doubt if any of you were expecting me to preside over my own funeral today, but there's a first time for everything. This video presentation is intended to provide you with a summary history of my life, as much as many of you may not have known me for my own 80 plus years now. My parents were Woodson J. Savage Jr. and Audrey Downer Savage. My father met my mother in Hickory Valley, Tennessee. They were married on May 8, 1941 in Hernando, Mississippi. They went on to New Orleans on their honeymoon. Then when they came back, they lived with my dad's grandparents in Bolivar, Tennessee. My parents were still living with his parents when I was conceived. When my grandfather found out my mother was pregnant, he told my father that there would be 2 generations of Savages too many living in his house. And he gave my father a rental home that he had at 509 East Market Street. I was born in this home at 509 East Market Street in Bolivar, Tennessee on August the 15th, 1944. I would be living here for my entire childhood through my college years. When I was born, my parents got a lot more than they bargained for. You see, I was born with a cleft lip and cleft palate, beginning on day 2 of my life, and for the next 14 years, I would go on to have 12 operations in Memphis, Tennessee. This is my very first photo taken on October 8, 1944, on the front steps of our home. The next photo is a baby picture of me with my zebra peeking at me. My first formal schooling began in Miss Ingram's kindergarten. Miss Ingram, Elizabeth Ingram, ran a school of childhood in the late 1940s. The attendance fee was $5 a month. Very formal instruction included etiquette, French, recitals. Girls were taught to curtsy. Boys had to bow, greeting her each day. Kindergarten was held in the basement of her beautiful antebellum home here, the Columns, and recess was held outside in the boxwood gardens. The birth of my brother Ken. You would think, after having me with all my problems at birth, my mother and father wouldn't have done this, but on June 11th, 1949, my mother gave birth to Kenneth Eugene Savage. These 2 pictures were taken at my grandparents' home in their front yard in Bolivar. The first is my mother and me with Ken, and the other one is my dad and me with Ken. As kids being raised in Bolivar, we were all lucky, as most of us would spend the next 12 years together going to the Bolivar Elementary School and the Bolivar Central High School. Sadly, many of my 60-plus original classmates are probably no longer with us today. My grandparents' home was located just behind the 1899 old elementary school building. This was the same school building that my father and his older brother, my Uncle Gene, and my Aunt Eb, who was older than him as well, attended. I called my grandmother Nana. Her name was Nana Campbell Savage. And I called my grandfather Papa. He was Woodson J. Savage Sr., and he was born in like 1876. Since my grandparents lived next door to the school, I had the luxury of eating lunch there 5 days a week for all 6 years of my elementary school. I was blessed to have been able to spend so much time with my grandparents. My grandfather, Woodson J. Savage Sr., would live to be 91 years old. and his wife, Nina Campbell Savage Sr., would live to be 95 years old. This picture shows my grandfather and grandmother sitting on the couch with their daughter, Evelyn Savage. Standing is their oldest son with the bow tie is Gene Savage, and my dad, the other gentleman standing, Woodson J. Savage Jr. My grandparents were very lucky in that they had the services of help. Bessie Trice was standing there in this picture, and she was their cook, and she did some light housekeeping for them as well. She worked for them for 39 years, whether it was sun, rain, sleet, or snow, 7 days a week. She walked over 2 miles to and from each day to get to this job. She prepared breakfast and lunch. She would cook one chicken up to 3 different ways for one meal just to please everybody. She made excellent pies. It goes without saying that I was spoiled rotten because all I had to do was say, I want cherry pie tomorrow, and guess what? It would magically appear the next day for my lunch. When I went to high school, I refused to eat the cafeteria food, and my mother had to pack my lunch for me for the next 6 years. Here's a picture of the 1899 elementary school that we all attended that no longer is in existence. It was in front of my grandparents' home. While I got fairly good grades in school, it will be of no surprise to some of you that really know me that I wasn't always the best acting kid in class. McCoy Ross was our elementary school principal, and he knew me on a first-name basis, as I was a frequent visitor to his office. One day, another kid and I had grabbed a girl's sweater in the classroom, and we were throwing it back and forth playing keep-away. The other kid ducked as I threw the sweater, and it went out of the second floor open window. Then another time, where kids used to get fruit, an apple or an orange with their school lunch. Many of them would often bring it back to the classroom. One day I took this girl's orange and was throwing it up in the air when it landed in the light fixture. Wouldn't you know that at that same moment Mr. Ross walked by at the door, and he gave me one dirty look and said that orange had better be out of that light fixture before class starts back up. After he left, I grabbed a broom and knocked it out of there. That wasn't enough. In the 3rd or 4th grade, we had a substitute teacher for one afternoon. She asked the class what the regular teacher did with us during this time span. And I chimed in that she let us play checkers. Of course, several of the other kids went right along with my story. The next day, when the regular teacher came back, she learned what had happened, and she sent me and 6 other kids to the principal's office. Our punishment was that we had to sit outside the principal's office on the old all-wooden floor and play checkers for a whole week instead of having our normal recess period. Of course, being the smart aleck kid that I am, I marched into Mr. Ross's office and asked him how he expected us to play checkers with only 7 people. And he said I could referee the first game. Most kids only had to endure Mr. Ross for 5 days a week. But lucky me, I got him for 6 days a week because his family, like mine, happened to be Methodist. Ironically, the Ross family would usually be sitting in the church pew in front of my family. Every Sunday, he would turn around and smile at me like a Cheshire cat. I was always afraid that he was going to tell my parents what I'd been up to the prior school week, because punishment at school usually meant I get another punishment when I got home. My mode of transportation changed quickly over the years. This picture, of course, I started out on my tricycle. At age 12, I had my own bicycle that I rode all over Bolivar. You can see me here with my brother Ken. At age 14, my dad and mom gave me a Harley-Davidson Hummer, model 125 motorcycle for Christmas. It was third hand, but I rode it everywhere. I would even ride over the Hornsby, 9 miles away, just to fill up on gas, because over there I could get gas for only 29 and 9/10 cents per gallon at Jernigan's store. At age 16, I bought my first car. It was a used 1955 Ford for $450. Later, I drove it to Memphis for an Earl Scheib paint job. Got it painted blue. Cost me $29.95. At about age 20, I bought a used Galaxy 500 for $1,900. Here I am with this car at my college graduation in Knoxville, which was in June of 1966. I had a lot of childhood hobbies. I always enjoyed this stuff to keep me occupied. My Uncle Horace Holmes and his wife Ebb, who was my father's sister, traveled the entire world in his job. They would bring me back coins and bills from each country they visited. My mother mounted these coins and bills into picture frames, and I displayed them at the Hardeman County Fair. I had money from over 42 different countries. I won first prize for my hobby for 6 different years at the fair, got a blue ribbon and $2 each year. Today, Confederate money is worth more value than the U.S. dollars. Mrs. Hudson, who was almost 100 years old at the time, she was the wife of the Hudson drugstore owner there in Bolivar. She gave me my first Confederate bill. It was a $20 bill with a picture of the Tennessee State Capitol on it. The bill was in perfect condition, and it had never even been folded. Later, I would go on to purchase a $500 bill from an antique shop in Mississippi for about $15. This one bill now is worth more than its face value of $500. My grandfather's hobby was woodworking. He taught me how to make all kinds of stuff out of wood. Here's a picture of me using a lathe with my dad and my granddad looking on, watching me. Also shown is another picture of me with a walnut bookcase and a shoe rack that I made. The bookcase is still being used today in my home office. My father's hobby was weaving. He bought a 4-harness floor loom from Canada. He made numerous coverlets, placemats, and different things. He even taught me how to use the loom. But it was never my favorite thing to do because to me it was too monotonous and redundant and boring. I also learned how to cane split-bottom chairs, as we always ran across antique chairs that needed their bottoms replaced. Silver dollars. Around the early 1960s, the U.S. government was taking silver dollars out of circulation. I happened to have my coin book price guide, and I decided to go up to the Hardeman County Savings Bank to draw out some silver dollars. I only had about $10 with me. I went to my grandparents' house 5 blocks away so I could check the mint marks and the dates on it so I could keep the most valuable silver dollars. And then if I had a couple of silver dollars left over that weren't valuable and some more money, I could go back to the bank. My grandfather happened to ask me what was I doing, and I told him. He gave me $20, very unusual for him. and I returned to the bank asking for more silver dollars. My grandfather, realizing what I was doing, gave me even more money so I could exchange for more silver dollars. After making 4 or 5 multiple trips to the bank, I had over 100 silver dollars with very valuable dates and mint marks. It upset the teller at the bank, and he went to the bank president to find out what I was doing. The bank president then called my father, but my father didn't have a clue what I was doing because I hadn't bothered to tell him. Those silver dollars have been steadily increasing in value. They will now belong to my son Jay. Some of them can be worth up to even $1,000. Life as a kid in Bolivar. My father was a lawyer, a very good one, and my mother was a homemaker, an excellent one. My father had no car when I was born. In fact, his first car was a used 1949 Ford. Prior to that, he walked to town to his job every day and walked home again for lunch. 2 round trips, 5 days a week. And on Saturday, he worked half days, so he made 1 round trip every Saturday. We were never poor or lacking for anything, but I grew up with a very frugal point of view. As a kid, a bottle of soda pop was 5 cents. Later, the price rose to 6 cents. And even later, it jumped to 10 cents per bottle. At that point, I thought the world was coming to an end. So how do you think I feel today when I spend $3.50 or $4 for a soda pop or an iced tea at a restaurant? I'll never get over it. I would go to the Louise Theater as a kid almost every Saturday on a matinee performance. Always Westerns or Tarzan-type movies. Admission was only 15 cents for children under 12. Now, if you were an adult, 13 or above, the price jumped up to 35 cents. And a bag of popcorn was only a nickel. Also later, I visit my cousin Nancy in New York my senior year. And I took the train with her in the New York City so we could go see a live Broadway play. Can you believe we each only paid about $20 to go see The King and I, and guess what? It featured Yul Brynner and Julie Andrews live at the show. So forgive me if I don't appreciate the high prices today for everything. Growing up, I enjoyed lots of extracurricular activities. Until I was 14 years old, most of my summers were tied up with surgeries, so I really never did team sports. I was very active in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts. I even received the God and Country Award in 1961. In the 4-H Club, I was very active and did a lot of things. I even won the state of Tennessee citizenship contest, and I was awarded a free scholarship and trip to the National 4-H Club Citizenship Short Course in Washington, D.C. And while I was there, I was able to visit the Capitol, the White House, and all the government buildings and monuments around there. It was a terrific time. The picture there shows a 4-H club and some of the people that I worked with and participated in 4-H in Hardeman County. In high school, I was in the Booster Club. I was in Future Teachers of America, though I never became one. I was in the Beta Club, Honor Society, and even the Journalism Club. I was co-editor of our school newspaper my senior year, and I also received the Journalism Award in 1962. And Carolyn Jernigan and I, who were seniors, received the Most Initiative Award in the annual Who's Who contest. Then after high school, I would go on to earn my engineering physics degree at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville in 1966, same school my father got his law degree in. While there, I served as a senator in student government. I was president of my dormitory association of Old Melrose Hall. I was also president of the Independent Students Association called ISA, where we were sponsored one of the first computer matchmaking dances in the United States. We also had a large test file service on campus so students could better prepare for taking exams. They could come and make copies of an old exam for a given teacher and see what types of questions they had so they'd be better prepared for taking courses. I also attended one of the first Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People courses that was ever taught specifically for college-age kids at UT. I graduated with a 3.08 out of 4-point average, but I soon realized that I probably didn't want to spend the rest of my life being an engineer. After interviewing several different job offers, I elected to join the Westinghouse Electric Corporation in Pittsburgh. I did that because they would let me join the company first and then later select a specific job at one of their 70-plus different companies or divisions in the country. My initial pay at Westinghouse was $660 a month. I thought I was rich. I tended to grow up with a strange philosophy in life. I've always believed that you need to do major life events in a certain sequence. These are the 6 activities. First, you're supposed to grow up. I did that by 1962. Second, you're supposed to get an education. I got my college degree in 1966. Then you're supposed to get a job. I also did that later in 1966 with Westinghouse. Then you're supposed to have a home. I did that in 1971. Then you get married in that order, 1972. And then finally, you can have kids. And I did that in 1978. For that reason, I didn't really do a lot of dating in high school or even in college. I won't mention any names of who I went out with because some of you may be alive and here, and I would hate to embarrass you. But over my lifetime, I worked for 3 major companies. I built and owned 3 homes in 3 different states, and I've been married twice, but I only have 1 child. After retirement at 69, I also wrote 3 books. 3 major companies. Over my 46-plus year working career, I worked for 3 major corporations in 3 states. First was Westinghouse, where I spent 13 years. It was at the Semiconductor Division, now called Power X, in Youngwood, Pennsylvania. I worked in product marketing, market research, and advertising. I introduced our industry's first user manual and data book for discrete semiconductors, which ultimately replaced the old Westinghouse catalog data sheet binder system that they've been using for years. I was selected by Westinghouse to attend the first ever executive MBA master's program at the University of Pittsburgh. This was a 2-year program held on alternate Fridays and Saturdays. The greatest benefit of this program was that I was only about 27 years old then, and most of my classmates, the 20-plus people, were much older than me, and I learned as much from these executives as I did from the formal classroom material in those 2 years. The photo you're looking at now shows the Westinghouse Semiconductor Division. I'm in the middle panel on the 2nd row with a little red X. This is when I first joined Westinghouse. Ranco Controls, I spent 10 years there in Plain City, Ohio. I served as customer service, market research, and advertising director. I was instrumental in defending Ranco in a federal district court lawsuit in California on copyright infringement. using a newly introduced VisiCal spreadsheet in the marketplace, I was able to demonstrate that our cross-reference material from our original sources dating back to 1949, which proved that the people who were suing us copied it illegally. The judge indicated my efforts were instrumental in deciding the case in Ranco's favor, where we earned about $150,000 in damages. After about 10 years of service, it was apparent to me that Ranco management was really trying to sell the company. In fact, a few years after I left the company, it was sold, and the headquarters and both plants in Ohio were ultimately closed. So my third job became American Electric, which later became Thomas & Betts, which later became ABB. I would spend 23 years here in Memphis. I was customer service manager initially and ultimately director of e-commerce. I was a pioneer in developing what they called was their signature service program, and it was the first and only electrical manufacturer in our industry to guarantee service levels to our distributor customers. And if we didn't meet those levels, we actually gave the customers a rebate, a cash rebate. I also led consolidation efforts for over 30 company acquisitions around the world while I worked there. I was an industry leader in web development and e-commerce even before Amazon and Google and some of the other web companies even existed.
So let's just talk a few achievements before we go. It's amazing what Woody has done for Thomas & Betts, keeping us as an industry-leading organization. 46 years of experience, one of the first pioneers of signature service, worked on the tops. Really, Woody pioneered TMD Access, and really it was the first in the industry to have a web portal. Survey last year told us that it continues to be out in front of all of our competitors. So Woody, you were many years ahead of time. 35 acquisitions, web catalog with Janet and Nancy, Rich Stanley and his crew, over 34,000 SKUs, again, industry leading, 88 million hits, web order entry, EDI, and just a raft of end user tools. And most recently, the CRM system. All under Woody's leadership with a great team.
So it was before Woody started in 1990. My boss was Mike Harless, who many of you knew. He was the VP of HR. And he called me. I was working we were starting up the first Bahalia at the time. And he called me and said, hey, are you going to be in the office on Monday? I'm not going to be here in a new customer service manager starting. I said, yeah, I can be there. He said, well, can you meet Woody Savage? He's our new customer service manager. I said, sure. I said, why don't you tell me a little bit about him? Well, he's kind of eccentric. He's brilliant. He knows our industry, but I think he's going to be really hard to handle. Mike spoke the truth. Thank you, Woody, for gracing us with your presence, your concern, your passion over the last 23 years. When you started with us, who would have known where we would be going? Nobody even knew where we were going. You took us there, kicking and screaming most of the time.
A lot of screaming.
But you had the vision and you took us there. So thank you from our organization, and thank you from the industry.
Just kidding. Rich, you want to add a couple words to Woody?
Just to reiterate, I mean, we wouldn't be where we were without Woody. You know, it's nice that he gave us credit, but he had the vision. He pushed our team with TMD Access, with CRM, with EDI, to really let us reach our full potential and really help the team out. Thinking back when I first started here, I worked on a lot of integrations with Woody, and I can say before there was Urban Spoon, before there was Yelp, before there was Google Maps, Woody could find the best restaurant anytime, as long as you didn't let him drive.
is that one thing we should all keep in mind is that everybody in this room, including myself, we're all overhead. The people that make our business work are at the plant. They make product, or the people at the warehouse who are picking, packing, and shipping, or delivering the quality product on time to our customers. And we just need to keep in mind that, that's the focal point. None of us would have jobs if we didn't have good quality products to deliver. And we've got to be thankful for that role and not lose sight of it. And remember that our customers are the reason we all have jobs, even the people at the plants. And that's the thing I think you want to keep in mind. And at the end of the day, if you're working on two projects and you don't have time to finish both of them, just ask yourself one question. Which of these two projects is of most value to the customer? And work on that one first. And if you look at it and find out neither one of them have any value for the customer, ask yourself what the hell you're doing. Three homes. Still a single guy working at Westinghouse. I bought 2 acres of land on the side of a hill from a farmer about a mile from my job. Paid him $4,500 for it in Hunker, PA. Then I contracted with a friend of mine who owned a 6-unit townhouse, which I was renting one of the units at the time, to build my first house for me. He did it for $29,000. My first house was built to look like a barn, with a silo and a spiral staircase on the second floor. I rented out the upstairs bedroom to help pay for my home, as I'd also rented out my townhouse apartment extra bedroom for just extra money. So the 2 pictures you're looking at now are the picture of my original home, which looked so like a barn. My second home was in Plain City, Ohio, near the headquarters of Ranco Controls. It was built in 1981 for $135,000 in New California Woods subdivision, which had about 25 homes at the time. The picture shown here was taken a few years ago when I visited the current owner of this property. My third home was built in Riverwood Farm subdivision in Cordova, Tennessee, which is part of Memphis. Unfortunately for me, because I get to pay double taxes, Memphis and Shelby County. But it was built in 1990 after I accepted the job with American Electric. I bought the lot for $60,000 and had the home built for $171,000. So hopefully this is my third and final home here on earth. So you can see a picture of that home with the trees all around it, and that's the way I like things. My 2 marriages. I've been blessed to have been married to 2 wonderful women in my lifetime. I'm sure those of you who are watching this who are married understand that I don't want to have 3 wives. I couldn't afford them. But I love the 2 wives I've had. I met Janet Duvall in Greensburg, PA at Bobby Dale's bar. A Westinghouse friend of mine, Bill Walker, happened to be at the bar with some of his Westinghouse golfing buddies when Janet happened to come in. Bill was talking to her and thought she might be a nice date for me. He called me at my home, which was about 10 miles away, and I came to the bar and met Janet. The rest is history. 3 months later, we got married on December the 8th, 1972. I can always remember this date because it was the day after Pearl Harbor Day, December the 7th. We were married at Homestead Park United Methodist Church in Homestead, PA, near downtown Pittsburgh. We're shown here cutting the cake, and my best man was Dave Long, who I knew from the University of Tennessee. He's pictured in the background. We were living at my first home in Hunker, PA. After several years, we wanted to have a child. Sadly, our first child died at birth on May 31st, 1977. He was buried at Southside Cemetery in Pittsburgh. Fortunately, Less than a year later, Janet would give birth to Woodson J. Savage IV, or Jay, at the University of Pittsburgh Hospital. You can see his picture there as a newborn baby. And then later this photo shows him at 8 months, and he's with my brother Ken's son, Gene. The next photo is showing Jay at age 3 with Janet and me. And the next photo is Jay visiting his older brother's grave in Pittsburgh, PA. In 1979, I accepted a job with Ranco Controls in Columbus, Ohio. Initially, Janet, Jay, and I moved to an apartment in northeast Columbus as the company was in the process of moving their headquarters to Plain City. So when the move was finally announced, I purchased property in New California Woods and had the second home built there. Here's a photo of Janet's family visiting us in Plain City. Janet's parents, Grayson and Edith Duvall, are seated on the couch with Jay between them. Standing on the right is Marilyn, who was Janet's older sister. Lita Marie, standing in the middle, is Marilyn's daughter. Of course, Janet and I are standing on the left. We collected a lot of things. One of the things we collected was B&O, or Baltimore and Ohio Railroad China. One reason we did this was because Janet's father, Grayson Duvall, was a conductor on the Baltimore and Ohio B&O Railroad for many years. So we collected this china, built up one of the largest private collections in the U.S., over 250 pieces. Our son Jay now has this collection. Janet had the honor of serving her dad dinner at our home in Plain City on B&O China. It was the first time he had ever gotten to eat on his Baltimore and Ohio Railroad China. The next picture was taken in Bolivar, Tennessee at my parents' home at Christmas time in 1989. I'd already terminated my employment with Ranco in June and had accepted a job with Westinghouse to begin in February of 1990 in Memphis. While I started my new job with Westinghouse in February 1990, Janet and Jay stayed in Plain City, Ohio until his 6th grade class year was completed in June of 1990. Then they came to Memphis. I had acquired land in Riverwood Farms to build what would become our third home as a married couple. The home was completed and we moved into the home in Cordova in the November of 1990. Janet was a great wife and devoted mother. She served on several school boards in Ohio while Jay attended school. And in Memphis, when Jay was active in the Children of the American Revolution, the CAR, Janet participated along with him in the DAR and related activities. She was a very devoted mother. Jay graduated from Houston High School in Germantown in 1996. Jay decided to go to Georgia Tech in Atlanta for his college education. He graduated in 2000 with a bachelor's degree in management from the Georgia Institute of Technology. At that time, I was $84,000 poorer. In fact, we were talking to one of the deans right near his graduation, and the dean was saying he was looking forward to Jay making donations to Georgia Tech. And I explained to the dean he was going to have to get in line because I needed to get the first $84,000. I'm still waiting for it. Suddenly, in 2004, my wife Janet was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. When we were told of her diagnosis in March, Janet said she only had 2 wishes. One was to live long enough to go to Jay's wedding to Mary, which was just going to take place in 10 days later. And the other was to live long enough to see her grandchildren. Sadly, she only lived long enough to fulfill her first wish. Here's the bride and groom's picture at their wedding on March 20th, 2004 in Roswell, Georgia. And here's a picture of Jay with me and Janet at the wedding reception that followed his wedding that day. Being 60 years old at the time, I'd experienced a number of deaths in my family. My mother had been suffering from dementia for several years, and she had been living in a care facility in Jackson, Tennessee. Fortunately, my brother Ken was able to take my dad on the weekly visits from Bolivar to Jackson to see her. My visits, unfortunately, were less frequent. Sadly, toward the end, her dementia got worse, and she didn't even know who we were. Finally, she passed away on June 19, 2004, at the age of 83. Picture here is of her in her casket. My dad announced at her viewing that since she would never be coming home again, that he was moving to an assisted living facility in Bolivar. As a result, Ken and I had to sell his home where we were both born and raised. We only got about $21,000 for the house, and Ken and I divided up the antiques and collectibles between the two of us. My wife Janet's health would continue to get worse, but one favorable note was that she was able to have friends and relatives as far away as Pennsylvania come and visit her before her death. Likewise, she was able to get closure on things and settle her estate matters before her death. Jay and Mary came to Memphis to see Janet, and she passed away the very next day. She died at age 58 on August the 29th, 2004, at Germantown Methodist Hospital. We were married for almost 32 years. Graveside services were held at the historic Elmwood Cemetery, right where we are now, here in Memphis. Here are two of the photos highlighting her funeral service here at Elmwood. Also, here's a picture of Janet's tombstone here. It was taken at Christmas time. Her tombstone represents the various stages of her life. The base or foundation of the tombstone represents her home state of Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. The tombstone is in the shape of a podium, for it represents her leadership in public education and various patriotic and religious organizations that she supported and participated in. The book on top represents her strong advocacy of public education. The symbols on the reverse side of this monument represent some of the organizations that were especially important to her throughout her life. The URL at the bottom of this monument reads www.pancan.org. It is a link to an organization that's dedicated to finding a cure for pancreatic cancer. In a few minutes from now, I'll be lying next to her. I plan to have a tree trunk as my tombstone. Woodson J. Savage III. While I hope my 6 months with Janet were productive as she was slowly dying, it took a lot out of both of us. After her death, I felt lost and bewildered. Several months after her funeral, I happened to see a posting on a dating site of a girl in Jonesboro, Arkansas. She drove to Cordova, where we met, and I took her to dinner. She had a son who was still living with her former husband. Her name was Carolyn Wisdom. She was a Canadian citizen, originally from Nova Scotia, but had lived in Arkansas since the age of 3 with her parents and her older sister. By a stroke of luck, we seemed quite compatible. To everyone's shock and surprise, On our third date in late November, we flew to Paris, France, had dinner at the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower, and I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. And that's a picture of us standing in the restaurant in the Eiffel Tower. It would be 8 months later when we officially got married on July 30th, 2005. We were married at the municipal park in Bartlett, Tennessee by the Methodist minister at Covenant Methodist Church. My best man was Dave Long, who had also served as my best man at my first wedding in Pennsylvania with Janet. He and his wife, Catherine Ward Long, were the only attendees at our private service. They were both close friends of mine from the University of Tennessee days in Knoxville, Tennessee. The next picture is a picture of Carolyn's family. Left to right, it's David Dewey and Carolyn's sister, Eva Dewey. Then it's Carolyn's stepfather, Ernest, and Jareen Robinson, her mother. Carolyn's son by a former marriage, Bradley Wisdom, in the background, and Carolyn and me on the right. Carolyn did get to meet my father and spend a little bit of time with him before he passed away. As a lawyer, my father always wanted to make sure that all his possessions were documented and identified as to who was going to get them. My father would live about 18 months after our mother passed away. He died on January 5th, 2006 at Jackson Madison County Hospital. He was 91 years old. And here's another picture showing a board of some of the history that was displayed at his funeral. Carolyn started working as an accountant in Memphis when she moved here with me. But in 2007, she decided to start her own tax preparation business. She established an office in our home in Cordova. Here's a website I designed for her business, www.memphistaxlady.com. And here's a billboard promoting her business. She would soon increase her business activity to 500 or 600 clients a year. Of course, now she's retired, she's reduced her workload to 100 clients or less. Carolyn has a great hobby of crocheting. She can make virtually anything. In fact, she's probably got more yarn in our home than some yarn stores have. She often wears t-shirts featuring her yarn hobby, but today this t-shirt will resonate with some of you. It's a savage thing you probably wouldn't understand. It's rare to get both sides of a family together at the same time, but this was Thanksgiving in 2016 near our home in Riverwood Farms. On the left is my son Jay and his wife Mary and their daughter Rebecca. I'm in the middle holding Drake Wisdom, which was Bradley Wisdom's son, with Carolyn, and on the right is Ariel and Bradley Wisdom and their daughter Jessica. And in a later photo of the same two families, you can tell the kids have grown up and the old folks, well, we just got older. I tend to do things in sets of three. Lived in 3 states, built 3 houses, worked for 3 different companies. After I retired, I even wrote 3 books. My first and only published was Streetcar Advertising in America. It tells the story of Baron Collier, who was born and raised in Memphis. He moved to New York City and built the largest streetcar advertising empire in America, servicing over 50,000 streetcars. This book was published in 2016, and it retailed at the time for $39.95, was roughly 160 pages long. In 2018, I self-published a book called Putting Your Customers' Needs First, a 50-year journey, which highlighted my career at my 3 companies where I became known for developing programs and websites devoted to making companies easier, our companies easier in the industry to do business with. This was an 85-page book. Last, around 2021, I self-published my book showing 77 years of my life at that point in time. I entitled the book, It's Not About Me, because I attempt to highlight all the people and things that I came across during my life up to that point. Much of this presentation you're hearing today came from this book, which was 110 pages long. My brother Ken wrote weekly articles for 5 years during the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, which was 1861 to 1865. He did this for the Bolivar Bulletin newspaper. After he'd finished all those, I decided to help him compile these articles into a self-published book, which turned out to be 350 pages. So that's what you're looking at here, the chronological history of the American Civil War that my brother Ken wrote. My advertising collection. I've been collecting signs for over 50 years now. I started with one from my grandfather's store. This is a picture of his hardware store in 1923. It was located on Bolivar's Main Street, directly across from the front of the courthouse building. This store had a first floor, a second floor, a basement, and he even rented the second floor of an adjacent building so that he had more space for his display and storage. He had this store from about 1905 to 1945 when he retired, which happened to be a year after I was born. This sign here, this picture, is a sign that hung over the sidewalk in front of this store. It was painted by his oldest son, Gene Savage, who would later become a noted architect for churches and schools in North Carolina. Here are 8 pictures of some of my sign collection. This first picture shows my 7-Up clock on the left and the W.J. Savage sign below the Railway Express Agency sign. You can see a whole bunch of signs here on this wall. The next picture shows I Want You, the U.S. Army. What's interesting about this sign is that regardless of where you walk in the room, he's automatically pointing at you. It's an optical illusion. Also, regardless of where you go, even if you head upstairs, you're going to see a lot more signs. Upstairs, on the left, you see my jukebox. There's a popcorn dispenser, a Salada tea display, and a lot of other signs. There's even a whiskey dispenser behind the jukebox. You can't quite see it. Also upstairs, you'll see my grandfather's NCR cash register. You'll see a Coca-Cola machine. There's a Westinghouse display sign on the Coke machine. And on the floor underneath the cash register is a cylinder photograph. In addition, this picture shows 4 items from a steamboat hanging on the wall: the ship's wheel, the steam whistle, the steamboat clock, and the bell. They all work. The slow school sign, tile dispenser, and other stuff are also there for your enjoyment. Also, a number of signs shown here on the first floor is from my Seaberg jukebox remote in the middle, and also the antique wall phone on the right that's been rewired, and it really works like a regular phone. In the kitchen, I have a number of advertising multi-milk dispensers, and they used to reside in drugstore soda fountains across America. One of my biggest collections is my streetcar advertising cards. I've collected over 2,000 streetcar advertising card images, which I've restored. These cards were usually 21 inches by 11 inches in size. These cards date from the early 1900s up to like 1940, when streetcars were phased out in America. I also have over 100 physical streetcar cards that are stacked up in a pile upstairs in my bedroom. Plus, I have a digital display in my office that shows over 200 of these streetcar card images, and that display rotates every 60 seconds to a new image. My largest collection, though, is the movie poster images. I have over 5,500 of them, and they date from around 1915 when movies first came out till the 1970s. These posters are all 27 inches by 41 inches in size, and they were featured on the front of movie theaters around the U.S. to advertise what new movies were coming to the local theaters. I also collect a lot of other stuff, some of which I've already given to my son Jay. Over 800 soda bottle caps, razor blade collection, 100 pieces of different restaurant china, Baltimore and Ohio Railroad china, 315 different dairy milk caps. I've even got 1,500 bars of hotel soap, which he's going to get. I know he can't wait. Time does not permit me to go into more detail here and now. The other sideline of me during my retirement years has been the creation of some websites for different purposes. Some of these sites are probably no longer even online today. I built a website featuring historic Bolivar, Tennessee. My brother Ken also contributed a lot of information to this site. This site has since been taken over by the City of Bolivar, and you can find this information on the cityofbolivar.com site. Select the visit option, then you select Historic Bolivar, and then select Learn More button, and you'll be able to see all the information that we accumulated and preserved on our history. On another website, we have some good friends of ours who live in Horn Lake, Mississippi. They live in an 1844 Octagon house which they restored. And I built a website to showcase this beautiful landmark home, one of the oldest Octagon houses in the state of Mississippi. I've lived in Riverwood Farm since 1990, and a few years ago some of us decided to run for the Homeowners Association board. So I created a website to promote these campaign efforts. Site's no longer online. Our community has 1,134 homes. As a result, we all got elected, and the board was able to reduce our quorum for changing our covenants and bylaws from 75% down to 50%, and they were also able to limit future home sales to rental companies so we can better maintain the quality of our neighborhood. I've also built a website to promote my streetcar advertising book, and that link is streetcaradvertisinghistory.com. Investing wisely for the long term. I've been extremely fortunate that I was working on computer applications and websites in 1990 and beyond, many times before Microsoft, Google, and Amazon even were established as companies. While I didn't necessarily get in on the ground floor on these companies, I did purchase stock well before they became super famous. Here are some of my greatest successes of computer, web, and internet-related stocks. There's Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, PayPal, Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, and eBay. My investment philosophy is quite simple. I try to invest in great growth companies with sound leadership that are destined to be leaders in their respective markets. I am not a day trader or a speculator looking for a quick buck. I want companies that I can invest in for the long term. I also seek out companies that can perform well even when the economy goes bad. Where will you be shopping when the economy tanks? Invest in stocks that thrive even in bad times. That's why you see Walmart here and Costco. I still buy all my gas at Costco. Yes, I have to wait in line, but it's the cheapest gas around. As an investor, we cannot control the economy and the world around us. That is why it's best to place your investments into a balanced portfolio so that you can continue to make a decent return on your investment in good times and bad. One way to do this is the Gone Fishing portfolio. It's an assortment of 10 Vanguard funds that you purchase in the specified increments of 5, 10, or 15%. Every 12 months, you need to rebalance your portfolio to those prescribed percentages. The chart shows you the 10 funds, and they're balanced funds. Some of them are domestic, some are foreign, some are small cap, some are large cap, even 5% are in gold stock. So it's a mixture to protect your investment. I'm also a fan of Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, and I've owned some of their B shares of stock since 2010, 2011. Wealth creation rules. I just happened to run across this listing, and it just seems like good advice. These 10 creation rules: number one, simply the budget, buy good assets, pay off your debts, don't carry debts longer than you have to, even pay off your home earlier if you can, increase your income where you can, develop unique skills because it'll help you, marry the right person, I guess that goes without saying, live below your means, that way you'll have excess funds to invest, create an emergency fund for things that you can't not anticipate, invest your earned income so it will grow alongside you, and also try to be around successful people as it runs together. In 2024, I was one of the few members of the original executive MBA program at University of Pittsburgh that was still going. I was asked to attend their 50th anniversary class, which was just starting up. I was about 27 years old when I was in the first class. Back then, the program cost Westinghouse $7,500 for the 2-year program to send me. Today, the same program costs $95,000 per student. I'm glad I went 50 years ago. I know this presentation's gone on much longer than anyone anticipated. I'm sorry I lived so long, otherwise it might have been shorter. My son Jay is Woodson J. Savage IV. Last time I checked, he was the Operations and Analytics for Enterprise Data Vice President of Product Management at Cox Automotive in Atlanta, Georgia. He's approaching a half a century or so now in age. I have 2 pictures of Jay to show you. Please let him know which photo was the better. He loves pets, but he inherited that from his dad, me. Here's a picture of him with his cat. And last, there's a picture of him with our puppy. I need to go now so I can change into my suit. Otherwise, I'll be late for my burial here in Elmwood Cemetery. Hope to see you all later, but for your sake, I hope it's much later. Thank you.